The night my husband came home waving his phone like he'd just won the lottery. I was elbow deep in dish soap, scrubbing the pan I'd used to make his mother's favorite chicken piccata. The one she'd requested, the one I'd made from scratch, the one nobody had thanked me for. 75,000, he said, dropping into the kitchen chair without taking his shoes off. Year-end bonus. $75,000. I turned off the tap, dried my hands on the dish towel, the one with the little moose on it that his sister had given us as a housewarming gift, back when she still pretended to like me. That's incredible, I said, and I meant it. I actually meant it. He grinned and started scrolling through something on his phone, already somewhere else in his head. Already. Planning. I went back to the dishes. I should tell you who we were before I tell you what happened. Because context matters. And because when you hear the ending, I want you to understand that I didn't set out to humiliate anyone. I really didn't. My husband and I had been married for 4 years when that bonus arrived. We'd been together for 6. I was 31. He was 35. We lived in a townhouse in Kitchener, Ontario, the kind of neighborhood where people put up Christmas lights in November and leave them up until March, and nobody judges anybody for it, because the winters are just that relentless. When we got married, we'd signed what his father's lawyer called a practical agreement, his words. What it actually was a document that kept his inheritance, his investments, and his income entirely separate from anything I might claim. His family had money, old money, the kind that's been in the same trust fund long enough to gather its own personality, and they weren't about to let some girl from Sudbury get her hands on it. I wasn't some girl from Sudbury trying to get her hands on anything. I was a registered nurse working 12-hour shifts at Grand River Hospital. But sure, fine. I signed it. I was 27 and in love, and his mother had been very kind to me that week, which I later understood was tactical. The agreement said his salary was his bonuses were his. Any property he'd owned before we married was his. What we split was the mortgage on the townhouse, which we'd bought together, and household expenses. 50-50. Every month. A spreadsheet, actually. My husband loved a spreadsheet. I made less than he did, considerably less. Nursing in Ontario pays reasonably well, but it doesn't pay $75,000 bonus money. My husband worked in tech, product management for a software company that had done very well in the past few years. He was good at his job. I respected that about him. I still do, actually, in the distant, cold way that you can respect someone once you understand exactly what they are. The 50-50 split had always bothered me, but I'd reasoned myself into accepting it. We both used the house. We both ate the food. Fine. What I hadn't fully accounted for in those early years was everything that didn't show up on the spreadsheet. The groceries I picked up on the way home from a night shift, because we were out of everything, and he'd forgotten again. The dinners I cooked because he didn't know how and had never particularly tried to learn. The cleaning I did because his baseline for clean enough was several standard deviations below mine. The social labor, remembering his mother's birthday, buying gifts for his colleagues' babies, RSVPing to his cousin's wedding in Muskoka. The mental load of running a household, invisible and uncompensated, while also working full-time in one of the most physically and emotionally demanding jobs that exists. None of that was on the spreadsheet. I'd brought it up over the years. Gently at first, then less gently. I do more around the house, I said once, near the end of our 2nd year. You're more particular about how things are done, he said. That's not the same as doing more. I didn't have the words for what was wrong with that sentence. I just knew something was. The bonus arrived in December, 2 weeks before Christmas. He told me about it on a Tuesday. By Thursday, he'd already decided what he was doing with it. Paying off his personal line of credit, maxing out his RRSP contribution for the year, and putting the rest into his investment account. Not our investment account, his. I said, that's great. Should we talk about the kitchen renovation? You know the dishwasher has been. That comes out of the household account, he said. 50-50. The household account that I contributed to equally, despite making less. The household account that paid for the groceries I bought, and the cleaning supplies I restocked, and the light bulbs I changed. Right, I said. I went to bed that night and lay very still in the dark, and I thought about a number. I thought about what a meal service would charge to plan, shop for, and prepare dinner for 2 people, 5 nights a week. I thought about what a cleaning service would charge to clean a 1,400-square-foot townhouse twice a month. I thought about what an event planner would charge for the dinner party I'd hosted for his work colleagues in October. 8 people, 3 courses, everything made from scratch, wine pairings I'd researched myself, and I'd worked a morning shift the day before. I'd never actually added it up before. I did it then, in the dark, on my phone. It was a lot of money. The Christmas party announcement came on a Saturday morning in late November. He walked into the kitchen where I was having my coffee and said, "So I talked to my parents and we're hosting Christmas Eve this year." I looked up from my mug. "We're hosting Christmas Eve. They want the whole family together. My sister's coming in from Vancouver, my aunt and uncle from Hamilton, my cousin and his wife, the kids." He counted on his fingers. "Probably 14 people." 14 people, I said, "give or take. My aunt might bring her neighbor, she's been having a rough year." I set my mug down very carefully. "And when you say we're hosting," I said, "what does that mean exactly?" "The usual," he said. He had already opened his laptop and was looking at something else. "Dinner, drinks, the whole thing. The usual meaning I cook. You're better at it and shop for 14 people. We'll split the cost." Obviously, that word. Obviously. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like he hadn't just come home from a week in which he'd deposited $75,000 into accounts with only his name on them. "We'll split the grocery cost," I said slowly, "for a dinner party you planned with your family that I will cook, shop for, and clean up after. And decorate," he added helpfully. "I know you like doing the decorating." I didn't say anything. I picked up my mug and I went upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bathtub for a while and I thought, here's the thing about malicious compliance. And I want to be very clear that I had never heard this term before my friend used it later, because I had not been lurking on Reddit plotting revenge. What I did came from a very simple, very tired place. I thought, he wants 50-50? Fine, I will give him 50-50. Exactly, 50-50. Down to the cent, down to the hour. I called my friend that afternoon. She's a project manager, which means she communicates in deliverables and timelines, and she is the best person I know to call when you need to think clearly. "He wants me to host Christmas Eve for 14 people, I said. "Split the cost 50-50. And he's done nothing with his bonus except put it in his own accounts." There was a pause. "Okay," she said. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to agree," I said. "I'm going to agree completely." Another pause. "Then tell me more." I told her the plan. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "You know this could go very badly." "I know. And you're okay with that?" "I've been okay with it going badly for about 3 years," I said. "I just didn't know it yet." The first thing I did was sit down with a spreadsheet of my own. I listed every task involved in hosting Christmas Eve for 14 people. Grocery shopping, I estimated 3 to 4 hours, including the drive to the Zares on Fairway, the specialty items from the butcher on King Street, the wine from the LCBO, meal planning and recipe research, 2 hours. Cooking on the day, 6 to 8 hours minimum for a proper sit-down dinner. Decorating, 2 hours. Table setting, 45 minutes. Cleanup, 2 hours minimum. Then I looked up rates. A personal chef for event cooking in the Waterloo region runs between $40 and $65 an hour. A cleaning service charges between $35 and $50 an hour. A personal shopper, which is a real service I checked, runs between $25 and $40 an hour. I used conservative estimates. I was fair. I was meticulous. I am a nurse. I understand documentation. I also listed the grocery items I intended to purchase for my half of the dinner. Because if we were splitting costs 50-50, I would be contributing to exactly half the dinner, half the guests. 7 people. My husband could figure out the other 7. I did not tell him any of this. The weeks between that Saturday morning and Christmas Eve were very quiet in our house. He sent emails to his family confirming the date and the address. His sister texted me directly, she always did, to ask if she should bring anything, and I said, "You're so sweet to ask, just bring yourselves." His mother called to say she was looking forward to it and mentioned, in the careful way she had, that his uncle was now lactose intolerant and his cousin's youngest had developed a nut allergy. I wrote it all down in my notes app, under a folder I titled Documentation. 2 weeks before Christmas Eve, I went to the Zares. I bought groceries for 7 people. A small turkey breast roast, not a whole bird, vegetables for 7. A pie, 1 pie from the bakery section, not homemade, because I was only feeding 7 people and a full scratch pie for 7 is an inefficient use of my time if this is a business transaction. Cream for the coffee, butter for the rolls, a decent bottle of Riesling from Henry of Pelham. Because I deserve something nice. I brought everything home and put it away and did not mention any of it. The following weekend, he said, "We should probably figure out the menu soon." "I've figured out mine," I said pleasantly. "Have you started on yours?" He looked up. "What? You said 50-50, so I'm doing my half and you're doing your half. I've got 7 people covered. What are you planning for the other 7? The silence that followed was very loud. I meant, he said slowly, that we'd split the cost. You'd plan everything and I'd pay for half, I said. Right. But that's not 50-50, is it? That's me providing a full catering service and you providing 50% of the ingredient cost. That's not equal. If we're doing this equally, then we're each responsible for feeding half the guests. That's insane, he said. Is it? I said. Or is 50-50 only appealing when it means I do all the work and you split the bill? He didn't answer. He went quiet in the way he did when he was angry and trying not to say something he couldn't take back. I recognized it. I'd seen it many times. I'll send you my grocery receipts, I said, so you know what you're matching. Christmas Eve arrived with that particular Canadian gray that isn't quite snow and isn't quite rain, just a general ambient dampness that gets into your coat no matter what you do. I was up early. I preheated the oven, prepared my 7-person roast, sets my place settings, 7 chairs, one end of the table, and opened my wine. He had ordered nothing, planned nothing. He had, in the 2 weeks since our conversation, made 2 phone calls that I knew of, one to his mother and one to his sister. I didn't know what was said. I could guess. His family began arriving at 6. His sister came first, straight from the airport, wheeling a carry-on. She hugged me in the hallway and said I looked exhausted, which was honest of her. His parents came 10 minutes later, his mother in her good wool coat, his father already looking like he needed a drink, his aunt and uncle from Hamilton, his cousin with his wife and their 2 kids. The neighbor, as promised. 14 people in the front hall, taking off boots, the noise of it, everyone talking at once. His mother looked past me into the dining room and I watched her expression shift. The table was set for 7, my end. His end was bare. Oh, she said. I've made dinner for 7, I said. My half. He said we were doing this 50-50, so I handled my contribution. The food's ready whenever you'd like to sit down. Dead silence. His sister said very quietly, "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "that if everyone's hungry, they're welcome to sit down and eat. There's a lovely turkey roast, roasted vegetables, rolls, a Riesling I'm quite pleased with, and a butter tart pie from Vincenzo's." I paused. I wasn't sure what he had planned for his half, but I'm sure he can explain. 14 people turned to look at my husband. He had gone the color of the wall behind him, which was a shade I'd always called builder's white. His father said, "Son." His mother said nothing. She had a very particular look on her face. Not angry, exactly, more like recalibrating. His cousin's youngest started crying, the way 4-year-olds do when the social energy in a room collapses, because they feel it even when they don't understand it. His aunt said, "Well, is there somewhere we could order from?" "Swiss Chalet delivers," I offered. "There's also a Boston Pizza on Victoria that's open Christmas Eve. The Mandarin might have availability, but you'd want to call ahead." His sister looked at me for a long moment, and then, very slowly, she started to laugh. Not unkindly. The helpless kind of laugh that means you understand exactly what you're seeing and you're not sure whether to cry. We ate. 7 of us. My food was excellent, if I say so myself. The roast was perfectly done, the vegetables caramelized, the Riesling cold and bright. His parents and his aunt and uncle ate Swiss Chalet in the kitchen from the boxes, which his mother accepted with a dignity I genuinely respected. His cousin ordered Boston Pizza and ate in the living room with the kids, who were delighted by this and kept asking if they could have the dipping sauce. My husband did not eat. He didn't speak to me for 2 days after Christmas. On the 3rd day, he sat down across from me at the kitchen table and said, "That was a cruel thing to do." "Was it?" I said. "I did exactly what you asked. 50-50. You embarrassed my family. You made an agreement with your family without consulting me and expected me to execute it for free, or for half the grocery cost, which is not the same as free but is also not the same as fair. You've always been fine with how we do things." "I've never been fine with it," I said. "I've been quiet about it, which is different." He looked at me for a long moment, and I genuinely think, that something shifted for him in that moment. Not guilt, exactly. More like the slow, uncomfortable recognition that a story he'd been telling himself for years might have a different narrator. "So what do you want?" he said. That was the first time he'd asked me that. In 4 years of marriage, it was the first time he'd asked. I had an answer ready, because I'd been preparing it for 2 weeks, with my spreadsheet and my documentation folder, and the quiet clarity that comes from deciding, finally, what you're willing to accept. "I want the household expenses recalculated based on income proportion," I said. I make 62% of what you make. I should pay 62% of 62%, not 50% of 100%. I want the labor in this house acknowledged and either shared equally or compensated. And I want the agreement looked at again by my own lawyer, not your father's lawyer, mine. He stared at me. If those things don't happen, I said, I want to separate. We tried for a while. He agreed to meet with a mediator. He agreed, somewhat grudgingly, to adjust the expense split, though his version of the new arrangement still felt more like a negotiation than a recognition. He did the dishes 3 times in January. I counted. It wasn't enough. I think we both knew it wasn't enough. The problem wasn't the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet was just where the problem had become visible. The problem was that he had spent 4 years in a marriage without ever really considering that his wife was a full participant in it. That her time had value. That her labor had value. That her saying she was fine with something wasn't the same as actually being fine. I filed for separation in March. Because we had that agreement, the practical one, I didn't have a claim on his bonus or his investments. But I did have a claim on the equity in the townhouse, which had increased significantly since we'd bought it. My lawyer also raised the concept of unjust enrichment, the idea that he had materially benefited from my uncompensated contributions to the household and to his professional life. The client dinners I'd hosted, the events I'd managed, the years of domestic labor that had freed him to focus entirely on a career that had, by any measure, done very well. His lawyer pushed back. Mine was better. We settled out of court 8 months later. I won't give you the exact number, but I will say that it was enough to put a down payment on a condo in Waterloo, near the hospital, with south-facing windows and a kitchen I can actually cook in. My kitchen. Just mine. His sister texted me after the settlement. We'd stayed in occasional contact. She had always been more clear-eyed about her brother than anyone else in the family, which I think is a particular kind of loneliness. Knowing your person clearly, and loving them anyway. I just want you to know, she wrote, that what you did at Christmas Eve was the most Canadian thing I have ever witnessed. Complete politeness. Total destruction. I laughed at that for a long time. She was right. I hadn't raised my voice once. I'd offered Swiss chalet. I'd served a very nice Riesling. I'd wished everyone a Merry Christmas as they left, even his mother, who had given me a look on her way out the door that I still can't entirely interpret. Somewhere between reproach and something that might, in another life, have been respect. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. The labor of a household is real labor. It has monetary value. In Canada, studies have consistently estimated that unpaid domestic work, cooking, cleaning, childcare, household management, would cost tens of thousands of dollars per year if purchased on the open market. When you split a household 50-50 in dollars, but one person provides 90% of the domestic labor, that's not a 50-50 split, that's a subsidy. That's one person quietly, invisibly funding the other's comfort and professional success with time they will never get back. I spent 4 years providing that subsidy. I didn't know the word for it then. I do now. The butter tart pie, by the way, was exceptional. I had a second slice with my coffee on Boxing Day, sitting alone in my kitchen in the gray December quiet, and it was one of the best things I'd tasted in years. Funny, what things taste like when you're eating them on your own terms. I engaged the deadbolt. I opened my laptop. I started looking at condos, and for the first time in a very long time, I knew exactly what I was worth.